Hey, just wanted to say, there's an important announcement at the end of the video, so stick around to find out. One of my very favorite games I have ever played, if not the very best, is Terraria. Released in 2011 for Microsoft Windows, it has since spread to almost every console and is officially the #1 rated game on all of Steam, with an 8.81 out of 10 with over 700,000 ratings. It is similar to Minecraft in many ways, with the creator even stating that it was partially inspired by the game. Yet even with the similarities to games such as Minecraft and the Metroid series, it is different in far more ways, which I will cover in this video. Before we can even begin to describe the physical, digital world of Terraria, we have to create it first. You can name it anything, customize its seed to make it unique, and then select the world size. You can choose the small size, which is best for a short, quick playthrough, medium, which is best for an average playthrough, or for bringing a friend, or the large world, which is supersized for long-term progression, or a large group of friends. Next, you can choose the difficulty. The easiest, Journey Mode, is only intended for Journey Mode characters, which I will get to later. Then you have Classic, which is kind of self-explanatory. Next, you've got Expert, which increases the difficulty of enemies, giving most of them twice as much health and damage, and receiving 10% less knockback. And finally, you've got Master Mode. Newly introduced during the 1.4 updates. It further increases the strength of enemies, giving them 50% more health and damage than even Expert Mode, and an additional 10% knockback resistance. That means that the health and damage are increased by 300%, or 3 times, from Classic Mode, and the knockback resistance is increased by 20%. Master Mode isn't all bad, though. You gain an extra accessory slot, for example, and bosses drop an extra pet or mount. But enough about that, now we need to get onto the actual world. The final option you can choose is the Infection. You can choose the Corruption, a purple, chasmy biome with giant worms and flying slimes. Yes, chasmy is an actual word. Anyway, you can also choose the Crimson, a scarlet, blood-like area with spiders and distorted creatures. The Hallowed is also considered an infection, but is only unlocked once you reach hard mode, and is in every world. Once you select a combination of these options, you can finally venture into the unknown world of Terraria. You will always load in next to the world center of 00, which will always be in a forest biome. If you don't know, a biome is like an area of the world, like a desert. Depending on which world size you chose, there will always be at least one infected biome of your choice, but the most I have seen is 3 in a large world. There will be desert biomes, a snow biome, a jungle, and 2 oceans. There are also various underground variants of these biomes, with the jungle being the largest. There is also a dungeon, which will always spawn on the opposite side of 00 as the jungle, and needs to be unlocked by defeating a boss. These biomes can also be infected, but will remain in somewhat of the same state as they are normally, with the exception being the jungle, which gets completely overtaken if not watched carefully. There are underground and cavern biomes, which take up the entirety of the bottom map, but stop at hell. Hell is probably exactly what you think it is, with giant lava pools and with the floor and ceiling made out of ash blocks, and the only entities able to survive there being demons, bone serpents, imps, and specially evolved butterflies. There is also a space biome, which does actually have structures called Sky Islands, which are great places to get early gear and weapons. I haven't gone into much detail about the separate biomes, but they will be explained better throughout the video, I promise. There are currently 487 different entities that can spawn in the world of Terraria, with more than half of them trying to kill you. There are 29 different NPCs, most of which will sell and buy items, like the steampunker and the demolitionist, and 3 of which will not move into houses, like the traveling merchant. The other 26 can be obtained by defeating bosses, like the dryad, finding them out in the world like the Goblin Tinkerer, or simply having an open house for them to move into, like the Painter. Another 86 of them are critters, which are harmless and will not interact with the player. They range from the prismatic lacewing to the worm or the penguin. All of them can be caught with a bug net, with the exception being the dolphin and sea turtle. They can all be caged and placed as furniture in a zoo or something similar, or in the case of fireflies and lightning bugs, can be used as valid light sources. The remaining 372 will definitely interact with the player, trying to cause damage and kill them. 2 of them are unspawnable, and 174 of these can only be summoned during a boss fight or an event, or are bosses themselves, which I will also get into later. They spawn in all different biomes, all different times of day, all different weather conditions, and all different stages of the game. There was a Dungeon Defenders 2 crossover that even had the Old Ones Army event, which can drop you some pretty cool loot. There are also separate pirate, goblin, and alien invasions, along with the Frost and Pumpkin Moon and Solar Eclipse events. Technically, there is also the Frost Legion, but that is a limited time event during the holiday season or the day after the Frost Moon, and it's just snowmen. There are also 4 major stages of the game that are widely recognized, and all unlock many different things during each one. The first one is pre-hard mode, which is the stage that the game is first generated in. Compared to the rest of the game, you are extremely limited in what you can do, and I would say it is the most grindy stage of the game. The second is pre-mech, which is unlocked after defeating the Wall of Flesh and progressing into hard mode. You unlock a lot of hard mode before this stage is complete, but it is still necessary to beat the game, even though it is one of the games that have no true end. The third stage, pre-golem, is probably one of the fastest stages of the game. There is also the pre-plantera stage, but I consider that to be kind of a sub-stage. You need to defeat plantera to be able to fight golem, but plantera is one of the easier bosses in hard mode. You don't unlock as much stuff in this stage as you do in the previous 2, but still a good amount. The final stage, post-Moon Lord, is considered the end of the game, but it does not make you start a new world or anything. You have just unlocked everything that there is in the game, and you are free to do anything you want. Moon Lord is supposed to be the hardest boss in the game, as it is the final one that you face in a normal playthrough, but I actually consider bosses like Duke Fishrin to be more difficult. Kind of an abrupt cut off from the last section, but I had started to merge into this section a bit too much to still be in the creature section. But like I was saying, I consider Duke Fishron to be more difficult than the Moon Lord. That is because of the difference in equipment that you have during the separate stages, or when you fight each boss. Obviously, if you fight Duke Fishron after Moon Lord with the best weapons in the game, it'd be like clockwork. But if you fight it pre-mech, which I'm still a bit surprised that you can, it would be extremely difficult if not impossible if you aren't an excellent player. Maybe that's why I find it so difficult. But anyway, I'll list off all the bosses in about the order the average player would fight them. King Slime, a giant slime with a crown that provides no in-game progression and is widely used as target practice for later players. The Eye of Cthulhu, a giant flying eyeball that summons other, smaller eyes to help damage the player. In Expert and Master mode, it also has a fast dash attack that can be difficult to avoid. Eater of Worlds and Brain of Cthulhu, the Corruption and Crimson respective bosses. The Eater of Worlds is an extremely long worm that can be broken into multiple different worms if not careful. In Expert and Master mode, it can shoot projectiles called Vile Spit at the player, which can deal large amounts of damage. From now on, assume that anything I say happens in Expert mode also happens in Master mode. The Brain of Cthulhu is a large brain that has many smaller creepers flying around it, which all need to be killed before it can transform into its second stage. In this stage, it teleports around you, and in Expert mode, it makes fake copies of itself to confuse you on which is the real one, but it is relatively easy to spot which one is real. Queen Bee, a giant bee that can dash at you, shoot stingers, and fire other smaller bees at you. The last 2 attacks can inflict the poison debuff on you, which can drain your health, even if you are not getting hit. Skeletron, a giant floating skull with two long, bony arms that try and hit you. In expert mode, if one or both of its arms are destroyed, it will shoot cursed skulls at you, which are pretty easy to avoid but deal reasonable damage. Skeletron is one of the few bosses required for in-game progression, and defeating it also unlocks the dungeon, which has many useful items hidden deep within its many corridors. The Wall of Flesh, an impenetrable wall that chases you across all of hell, and requires the guide to be sacrificed in order for it to spawn. Defeating it is required, as it sets your world into hard mode once it has been killed. We now get into the hard mode bosses, which are much harder than the previously mentioned pre-hard mode bosses. The Queen Slime, another giant slime with many similarities to King Slime, except it's pink and can fly in its second form. I am going to put the 3 mech bosses into one section, as they are all based on their pre-hard mode counterparts. The Twins, 2 giant eyes that shoot lasers and cursed flames respectively. The Destroyer, a giant metal worm that shoots lasers and spawns probes that chase you around. And Skeletron Prime, a giant metal skull with 4 various arms, 2 melees, and 2 ranged. Defeating these 3 unlock the next boss and the part of the game I earlier called Pre-Golem. Plantera, a giant flowering plant that moves around using vine-like hooks and shoots seeds and spike balls at you. In her second form, her pink petals blow off and she tries to run into you, while her hooks sprout multiple smaller tendrils which will damage you on contact. She is required to gain access to the next boss if you don't want to use glitches to beat the game. Golem, a large, ancient machine with 2 arms and a head that can be damaged. Destroying the arms is not needed, but is helpful like in the Skeletron fight. In its second form, its head flies above you and shoots lasers while its body tries to jump on you. It is required to defeat to unlock the final stage of the game. The Empress of Light, the other hallowed themed boss besides the Queen Slime, is spawned by killing a prismatic lacewing and is considered to be a bullet hell boss, meaning her attacks have many projectiles and can be difficult to avoid. If fought during the day, all of her attacks will instantly kill you, taking her fight to the next level. If successfully defeated during the day, however, she will drop the most powerful summoner class weapon in the game, the Terra Prisma. Duke Fishron, a giant pig-looking fish that is apparently a post-golem boss, even though I always defeat him even before Plantera. He drops some extremely good weapons, some of which are widely used even in the post-Moon Lord stage of the game. And we finally get onto the Lunar event, the final 2 boss fights of the game that are a sort of cause and effect situation. The Lunatic Cultist, a cult leader that has multiple various mystical attacks, but doesn't pose too much of a threat. Defeating the Lunatic Cultist starts the Lunar event, a required situation that summons the Stardust, Nebula, Solar, and Vortex pillars, all of which require you to defeat the different enemies that spawn in that area to damage the pillars themselves. Once you defeat the pillars, you can craft weapons from the fragments that they drop, but do it fast, as it's only a matter of time before he arrives. The Moon Lord, the final boss of the entire game of Terraria. With a variety of high damaging attacks and status debuffs, it'll be sure to give you a challenge. Defeating this boss would, you guessed it, put you into the post-Moon Lord stage of the game. I would go into the other event mini-bosses, but I've dragged this section out for 2 pages of my script, so I think I'm good. I just wanted to mention this part of the game real quick, because this is the most ridiculous thing I have ever seen in any game, and it's supposed to be there. The entire game of Terraria has a total of over 5,000 different items. That part is crazy to me. In one of my journey mode characters, you can duplicate items to have as many as you want at any time, and it took me multiple days from day to night to do it with them all lined up neatly in chests, not to mention the time needed to collect them all. There are only 379 crafting recipes in all of Minecraft 1.16, and of course, not all of the items in Terraria can be crafted, but there are still probably 10 times the amount there are in Minecraft, all ranging from a flesh bastille to the Zenith, the most powerful weapon in the game. It has a total of 21 steps to completely craft the sword, all at different stages of the game, and that's not even the biggest one. Anyways, I think it's time we start wrapping this thing up before I go on even more of a rant. Terraria does have an official story, but it really just tells the tale of the Moon Lord and the infections that are a part of the world. Its official lore was released on the 16th of May, 2019 by the creators of the game, and I will provide a link to it in the description if you want to read the whole thing. The Terraria community is very dedicated to its game, and some even celebrated a solar eclipse that happened in real life during the peak popularity of the game's period. There are millions of people that follow the Terraria Discord server, Steam game, and forum, making these some of the largest internet gaming groups in the world. It has also given way to some amazing YouTubers like Chippy Gaming and Happy Days, but of course, they are not the only ones. "487 entities, 5,000 plus crafting recipes. I don't know a single game that even comes close to that number. While writing this script, I finally came to realize that this is not one of my favorite games. It is my favorite game. The average Terraria player has 162 hours of playtime under their belt. I have 490. You might think that's a lot of time, but the person with the most playtime ever has over 64,900 hours. That's almost 7.5 years. I don't know if I wish I played that much or not. But anyway, I will provide a link in the description if you want to experience the glorious triumphs and devastating losses that this game has brought upon millions of people. Post-editing RC here, just a couple things to say. Thanks to Sharkboy123 for helping me with my script. Also, I am starting to stream on Twitch. Follow Review Connections Live to watch me play the games before I review them, and you might even hear my actual voice. I know, right? Crazy. Oh, I also tried to bump up my editing a bit from last video, and I hope it shows. Anyways, that's all, so have a great one, everybody.